Okay, before we get started, did you hear the part I was talking to Evan about? I'm teaching the cash course to two groups tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah, so just a really good live beta going on tomorrow. I'm excited.
nice.
Yes,
That's in, or you
yes,
said you're in Ohio or you're going to
yeah.
Ohio? Okay,
No, I'm here now.
okay,
I'm sitting in a hotel room talking to you guys.
sweet. Yeah, I had today off, did a couple errands, and then tomorrow I'm working a double at the bar, so that'll be fun. 12 hours is a
Yeah,
long shift.
I
Yeah, no,
bet
I feel you.
Yeah,
that's a lot of time on your feet.
yeah, but
That's
there's
a lot of
food
time at
there.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
period.
not used to it. Or at least like I know that's like for some people that's like typical, or mostly for men, like, oh, 12 hours, we all do that. I'm like, well, good for
I
you,
mean,
but if you're bartending, that's a lot.
yeah, as a man, I can speak from experience. That's an excessive amount of time. I used to have a 13 and a half hour shift on Saturdays, and it was a lot.
Yeah,
8 o'clock to like 9 p.m. is a lot of time to be not home.
right.
I tell you, there's been times in my life. What's awesome is when you're so engaged and happy with what you're doing that you can pull 12-hour days no problem.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be forced to stop. I love being in those grooves.
I can feel that.
Did
Yeah.
you guys get those stories I sent over Slack? Just in
No.
case you wanted
Let
to.
me open.
Okay.
I
I
need a
just sent
third
just in a
monitor.
group chat with us. I sent over just the three stories we'll be covering. You don't have
All
to look
right.
at them now. You don't have to, just because Evan, you said last time you wanted them in front of you while I read it.
I need another monitor though.
See,
Okay, let's
I'm
do
looking
it.
at three screens right now, and I got Discord up on one, OBS, on my PC next to it. I got my laptop down beneath because for some reason my PC won't let me pull up certain web addresses right now. But I don't have an update on my computer, so I don't know why it's doing that to me. I'm connected to the internet. So,
Weird.
yeah, so I'm like reading off my laptop but recording on my PC. So, but yeah, speaking of that, I'm recording now. So, if you guys are ready, we just dive into it. We got three
Yeah, let's go.
stories. All right. So you guys can pick. Um, I'll read these titles and you guys tell me which one you want to hear first. So
Yeah.
so we're going to dive into managers versus leaders. So unfair treatment in the workplace. So Keith, I'm sure you're like ready to dive into that as far as, well, let me tell you how to lead and not just manage, because I know you've said in the past like bosses are just like, I feel like that's such a negative word nowadays, is if you say like my boss or my manager, it's like, versus leader is just so much more positive.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
feel
it's
that.
it's such a shame. There's a huge gap in leadership out there. There's a void, let's put it that way. And so let's talk about the case that you're talking about.
Yeah. So the first one, well, I'll read a couple of these titles here, and you guys tell me which one you want to go first. So this one's just they need advice. They're dealing with rude leadership. That's pretty generic. Um, the next one is someone died today at work, and they put us back to work 1 hour later. So that one's probably a little heavy. And then this is 19 days ago. I had a work from home job for 4 hours. They told me I couldn't sit in a certain chair. So which one do you want to?
Whoa.
That one, you think?
Whoa. Well,
Yeah,
let's start out with that one. Is there more to
Yeah,
that
we're
story that
we're
you
gonna
can
read
share?
them all. Yeah, yeah.
a
Those are
chair.
just the titles. This one's a little lengthy, so I'll try to do the best I can with reading. If I stumble, well, oh well.
Hey, we're all human.
All right. So I had a work from home job. Like I said, this one was 19 days ago, so it's somewhat new. It's from the subreddit r/anti-work. Um, so this person says, I had a work from home job for 4 hours. They told me I couldn't sit in a certain chair. So I recently took a remote position with an in-home veterinary euthanasia company because I'm 2 years into a disability that I'm still acclimating to and working on accepting. I've been in the veterinary industry for several years prior to this as a practice manager, veterinary assistant, and receptionist. I'm no longer physically capable of working in a normal clinic setting unless I strictly work reception and only have good days. On bad days, I need to lay back and elevate my feet because not doing so causes severe chest pain and a high heart rate for me. I hate it so very much. I'm telling you all this because I resigned from this position 4 hours after starting. The first 4 hours of work was a Zoom call that covered introductions and what we'd be doing in training, as well as some tax paperwork with HR. So, this was by far one of the most overbearing companies I've ever worked for, even if it was only for a moment. They have a stipulation in their handbook that says you have to ask permission to get a second job, even though they only pay $15 an hour. I feel like, is that common though? Just a quick
Well, what's
pause.
Jess, what's common is amateurs running businesses and leading people.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to be pejorative or be negative towards management out there. It's a true, it's a truism. There's something happened to our business dynamic during COVID, and it fractured processes, and it fractured long-term relationships, and so like many, my industry evaporated. As you guys know, I work in the face-to-face consulting industry, where I go out and meet with clients on site, and we talk about business strategy, leadership, accountability, all these wonderful things that are necessary to have an effective business.
Yeah.
And being holed up in during COVID for a while, I was on an extended break. This is when we decided to write a couple books together. And now that I'm back in the field for a year now, and visiting with new clients, I'm still seeing the same thing everywhere. Just massive gaps in all kinds of things. What we would call simple corporate structures, like having an onboarding process, having a welcome aboard package that sets new employees at ease with all the expectations, pay plans that make sense, policies that make sense, and we're seeing just a complete unraveling of things that kept businesses together. I can
Yeah.
talk for hours, as you know, about this stuff, but it's like this story just breaks my heart. This is a person who's suffering, thought that they still want to contribute, they still have value, they were offered a job, and yet there's this massive disconnect that has this person brokenhearted within 4 hours of employment. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I'm
It gets worse
pretty
too.
sure that's illegal too, if I am correct. I don't think a company can tell you what you can or cannot do within your personal time that you're not currently working. And unless it's like a trade secret type of deal and you sign an
Right.
NDA, if you
Yeah.
had another job as if from like a remote standpoint, like moderating like a website that a school owns or something where kids can socialize, I don't think that would violate you wouldn't be violating any like confidential like trade secrets. So I don't honestly think from a legal standpoint they can tell you or make you get approval from them if you choose to get a second job.
Yeah. So they
So that
said
would be something
what
to
they have
look
a
into.
stipulation in their handbook that says you have to ask permission to get a second. So I mean, at least you have to, I mean, that's not necessarily no, but maybe they want to make sure it aligns with their like you're not competing with them. Maybe it's like a compete clause. I
Yeah, but
don't
that
know.
would just be in the I feel like that would just be in a like an NDA because like when I working at Lifetime, I can't be I was swim instructing and I can't teach anywhere else swim instruction wise for I think it's almost a year after I ended my employment with them. So that's where I'm kind of confused at. It's
Yeah.
huh.
Well, let me keep reading here. So they're instructed that they couldn't help elderly clients. Um, look up somewhere else to go if we couldn't help them for liability reasons, but really they just didn't want a bad experience to come back to them. She had that in like parentheses, or she, he. I guess I don't know who OP is, but anyway. So they wanted to be able to visit my actual physical house to make sure my work area that I paid for met their standards. That's kind of weird to like physically go to their house though, because
Yeah,
most
that must be
most
a
remote
big
positions you just say like they expect you to have good internet, and a car
yeah.
for travel, whatever it is. But I've never. That's creepy.
Yeah, that is really, and the
Like,
fact that
let
they
me
have a
come to your
big
house
enough,
and make sure you're telling the truth.
yeah, and the fact that they have the funding and the budget to like send people out to other random people's houses that could potentially across the country or around the world to say, is your house okay enough? That's weird. That is really weird.
And they say here, so they go, these were all reasonably sized red flags that I ignored. So, because
Yeah,
that's why I'm like, that's really suspicious.
Reasonably is an
and
understatement.
and yeah, and Jess, I think you can stop right there because that sums it all up because this individual recognized the red flags. And I'll ask you guys, how many times have you started a job either, during the recruitment or the interview or the onboarding process where things just didn't feel right? Or things just didn't line up or add up, and you started to notice some discrepancies, and you start asking yourself, why am I here? What is
Yeah,
going on? You guys ever experience that?
like the true
Yeah,
colors.
I personally have too. There's been some weird incidences with employers.
And what I find is, I really like his self-admission that he says, he ignored them.
He or
And
she, we don't know, but yeah,
Right, right. And I have found myself in that situation, um, have many times in my life where I've ignored the warning signs and you pay the price. And ultimately, it's our fault because
yeah.
our spider sense was tingling, we knew something was going on.
But that's
And
also how you
but
learn too,
oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah. And you recognize the inner arguments within yourself,
yeah,
because we have those warning signs, but yet we kind of set them aside because we really need the job. We got bills to pay, we're behind on bills, we got to put food on the table. And
yeah,
unfortunately so many folks get trapped into that cycle. And then, can you imagine if this person was still there and just feeling the way they feel? It's an awful existence.
yeah. So Opie goes on. So 4 hours into training, we break for lunch, and I'm asked to stay behind by our trainer, Aaron. Aaron asked me why I'm not sitting at a desk. I explained to Aaron that though I started the session at a desk, I grew uncomfortable and had to move to a different chair because of my disability. Aaron asks if I disclosed this disability during the interview and if it was, quote, clear that I needed to provide a satisfactory workplace. I explained that I was under absolutely no obligation to disclose my disability during an interview and that I wasn't having any problem working from where I was sitting. Aaron told me I could not sit in the chair I was sitting in and that I would need to make an accommodation request in order to continue sitting there. But until then, I needed to sit in the chair that I found extremely uncomfortable. I kind of want to see the chair. Prior to
Yes,
this, I had an ice pack on my chest because I was in a great deal of pain from sitting at the desk chair. I thanked Erin for her time and logged off. I wrote a resignation to HR because my time and energy are far too valuable to ignore over whether or not I'm allowed to create my own accommodation that has absolutely no effect on my working ability. The company in question will be reported to the EEOC for continuing to refuse to allow me to sit in a specific chair. And yes, I realize how insane that sounds. I spent a solid hour sobbing to my parents about this when it happened. It broke my heart to yet again have this horrible medical condition stand in my way, but I was not going to subject myself to the humiliation of having to ask permission to be comfortable.
yeah, agreed. That's that's just dumb.
I want to see the chair.
Yeah. But, like, my 2 cents is if I were an employer and I were employing employees, like, remotely, if the work is getting done and it's getting done effectively and well, I don't care what they're doing. If they have to have 10 subwoofers blasting the most obnoxious music ever, but they're doing amazing work, let them have their fun. If you wanna sit with a glass of wine and get your work done, same thing. As long as the work's getting done, it's getting done well. I don't see why there's issues about that, especially if it's something where you're not a face of the company, you're just either doing back end stuff or you're just talking over the phone. As long as that's not interrupting with quality or efficiency, I don't see why any company would care about what their employees are doing to stay focused or to just make their lives overall better. I mean, work should be fun and like maybe not necessarily fun, but it should be fulfilling. Like it shouldn't be I don't want to get out of bed this morning because I have work. It's got to get up, got to get the work done. Sounds good. And it's just down to earth, quick, happy. And I just don't understand why some companies have to be complete arses about just small menial stuff, especially when there's medical conditions involved too.
Right.
Like it
And
wasn't
they
just for
have
pleasure.
experience doing this, so it's not like this is their first go around, like it's obviously this company at fault for something. Like there's some kind of leadership uh like disconnect going on here.
Yeah.
Like it's almost as if this is the first time they're hearing of that. Like why can't you sit in our chair?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's usually a case of just nobody paying attention. And
Right.
whoever Erin is, Erin she has an image of in her mind of how things ought to be. And maybe she's using, her experience of, what the normal on-site workplace is like. That's why we had such fun writing Remotely Crazy. When we did a real deep dive into, what are all the healthy elements of working from home, or how do you create an environment that's healthy for yourself if you're working from home. And this person's instincts were spot on. You absolutely create, the proper ergonomics, the proper workspace. You may have an area where you're more creative or more diligent and focused. There's all kinds of different things that go on in people's, home space. And this is clearly an overstep. So
Yeah.
they lost a real a dedicated person that could have, made a difference.
And
yeah, and
so
ladies and gentlemen, we will provide links to the books that we're referencing and down in the comments section or in the description, so you guys can go check those out and pick one up for yourselves.
yeah, cuz guess what? This episode is brought to you by Remotely Crazy. We are sponsoring ourselves. The Motivator's Guide to Thriving in a Crazy Hybrid Pandemically Oppressed Tech-Laden World. Of course, we wrote this. Let's see, what year was that? I mean, it wasn't
This was
that
in
long
the thick of
ago.
it. It was
Yeah.
in the thick of it, though, right?
Yeah, this was right around the time where the Great Resignation was the hot topic. And now we're seeing the aftermath of it, and it's like an ongoing movement um where people were looking to leave the corporate world and just not even out of their own volition, but um work from home and live their best lives. So yeah, we wrote kind of like a resource guide, you know, lots of links in there to help you work from home and whatever else. So yeah, we'll have that linked below. I don't want to say it's like we struggle with like is it outdated or not. I mean, I think the title and whatever else we can play with this a little more cuz again, we wrote it at the time, but it's definitely like the information in it is evergreen for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Definitely if you want to thrive in either, the work from home or the hybrid environment.
yeah. Um
What's our next story?
So, well, before I move on real quick, I just wanted
Yeah.
to read some of these comments of what other people are saying. They did end up sharing. So this girl's name is Christina, so it is a woman. She ended up
Hmm.
putting like the screenshots of the emails that she sent or the letters she sent to the company. And I won't read all of them because she basically told us in the story what she said, but this was the company's response to her. They said, Christina, thank you for letting me know. Speaking up helps us evaluate our training and provides insight. We will accept your resignation today, effective immediately. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. So, I mean, I feel like that's nicely put, but like someone pointed out in the comments, the fact that they accepted your resignation instead of apologizing and mitigating the solution says a lot about what kind of shitty place they are. And that person got 10,000 likes on their comment. So I feel like the majority of people agree.
Yeah, there's no soul there. It's you've heard me just countless times go on rants about corporate America, and I describe them as these soulless bureaucracies. And there's no human touch. That's a generic letter, and goodbye. And they're not going to look into it. You
Right.
know,
Yeah, they said someone else said they had a problem with an accommodation you made for yourself in your own house. They didn't try to defend themselves or explain it because there's no possible way they can. There's
right?
absolutely no reason for any of them to have felt any certain way about anything you were doing at home in your own space. HR had a power trip and thought you'd just go along with it. So,
Yep.
all right, let's
Sad
move
but
on.
true.
Purpose and reason and cause are extremely important. This is the why of of your actions. This is knowing why you're doing what you're doing. This is the commander's intent. And so you absolutely these are important. If you don't know why you're doing something, well then let me ask you a question. Why are you doing something? It's very clear, it's very simple to understand. So you got to know if you don't know why you're doing something, then what are you going to do when you hit an obstacle? You're going to stop. What adaptations are you going to make when things go wrong to overcome them? You're not going to make any because you don't know why you're doing it. So if you have no reason for doing something, you're not going to do it. So you got to have a long-term goal. We got to understand the underlying purpose of what you're doing.
So we got, let's see, so we need advice, rude leadership. Let's see. We could do that one, or someone died today at work and they had
That
to
one
go back
sounds
to work after
interesting.
that. Yeah. Okay, we'll do that one. It's got 13,000 upvotes. So, lots of attention there. All right, this is from r/anti-work. I think the other one was too, right? Yeah. So, let's see. All right, still trying to comprehend what's going on here, but I'll do my best to explain. Context. I work in an older lumber mill, built in the 60s. Oh, I don't like where this is going.
I
So
don't
we
like
have a
first.
lot of older equipment. These machines we work with are constantly breaking down and causing upset conditions. So today, as I'm coming into work, our machines were running like crap. Common problem they've been planning on fixing for 2 months now. The man who was operating the machine at the time was dealing with this problem and had been clearing out the wood as part of his job to keep the machine going. These sheets of wood are over 200 pounds apiece, and they're in stacks of 30 to 50. So he's manually moving these stacks by hand. As he finishes restacking the entire load, he passes out, either due to exhaustion or a combination of different health problems and exhaustion. At that point, he hits the concrete floor face first. He then lays there in blood for the next 10 to 15 minutes until someone finds him. The first people to arrive start CPR until the ambulance shows up. Once paramedics arrive, they take over chest compressions and transport him to the hospital. Fast forward about 30 minutes, and all of day shift starts showing up. They call the entire company into a meeting to inform us of what happened. This meeting lasted about 5 minutes, in which they politically tell us, quote, this wasn't due to unsafe conditions, and to get back to work.
Bro.
All of us confused and concerned, we walk back to our departments and start working. Now we're working and the same issues keep coming up, causing the same upset conditions. We're fighting to restack the wood when an employee tells the boss something about, or along the lines of, well, I see we're never going to fix this, and this is what we're worth to the company. The boss responded with a stereotypical political boss answer. See, like, there's, even they, like, have that language, like, my boss. Ended with, quote, if you guys don't feel we support you, you can shut the line down and go home. We all look at each other, take off our hard hats, and walk out on him. Not sure what happens next or if any of us have jobs anymore, but we'll be damned if a company is going to treat us like our lives are expendable. I think in the end we did the right thing. What do you guys think? Did we do the right thing? Would you ever go back?
I personally think they did the right thing. I mean, you can't deal with conditions like that and just idly sit by, especially when somebody lost their life on the line and the company you're working for just doesn't care enough to actually do anything about that. And the only way to get to people who only care about money's head is to stop their flow of money. So if you're not working, I mean, and this goes to everybody who's struggling, with a corrupt boss, a corrupt leader, whatever. If money's the motivator and you're the person allowing them to make money efficiently and effectively, if rational means by communication and making people aware of the problem doesn't work, and it gets desperate, that's the best you can do is simply look for another job opportunity and quit, or like go on strike like the like auto
Yeah,
working
I
union
was gonna say
does.
this reminds me of what's going on right now.
Yeah, and just make them and be civil about it, mind you. Don't do anything violent. Don't be showing up at like your boss's house at like 3 a.m. or
Right.
anything obnoxious like that. But if they're not treating you well and there's been no grounds to actually improve the situation, or they don't even seem like they're interested in it, then by all means just don't show up or leave on the job or whatever. and start looking for another job opportunity, because trust me, your health and your well-being is not worth a miserable job every day. I mean, sure, money is tight, and I completely understand that, but like at the end of the day, your safety is more important than your safety and happiness is more important than grinding it out for some person who doesn't care about you. There's plenty of good employers out there. I mean, I've worked at good places, I've worked at bad places, and it's just a matter of seeking them out. That's what I got.
Yeah, find an organization that helps you pursue your dreams as well. There's an old adage about when you're working for somebody, you're helping that person achieve their dreams. And so it makes a big argument for entrepreneurship, of course. But there's a symbiotic relationship out there to be found where you can absolutely help somebody, help a company, help them grow, help them succeed, as long as the conditions are right for you to do the same thing. I mean, this story really strikes at home for a lot of us. And some of the writing that Jess and I, recently published, we made some very strong links to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And when you put these things in context, there's you have the phrase quiet quitting, right? People talk about these employees that they quit, but they've stayed, right? They're showing up to work every day, but in their mind and their
They're
heart they've
checked out.
quit,
Yeah.
right? And I would argue that these folks, before they walked off, were quiet quitters, because going back to Maslow, at that base of the pyramid, the what we call the basement, those primary needs of safety and security, working in unsafe conditions, to deaf ears and management, and in situations that could ultimately cost people their lives, their limbs. It just it literally creates the quiet quitting condition. It creates, low employee engagement. It creates unsafe conditions, especially when you have deaf management. So I applaud these folks, because what they did was so brave.
It really is.
Most of us have been in that situation where we want to walk. We would walk right now, but we have no place to land. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get the bills paid next month? Um, we wrote about this too. It's one of the things in Remotely Crazy. We talk about the importance of, if you find yourself in a situation like this, and it's okay, start formulating an exit plan. Start squeezing out some time every day to really start preparing for that exit. So, unless you just want to walk like these guys, I have to applaud them, because I think,
Yeah.
just kudos. That's amazing.
I just can't get
Just
over
amazing.
literally someone died and they're like, "All right, go back to work. Here's what happened, we're good." Like if I don't know, I feel like the morale must be broken in that team. Like to
Oh, of course.
I feel if I like I understand going back to work, like, we're not going to you know, end operations, but to at least for that day, or maybe like if it's a Thursday or whatever, like you have the rest of the week off, we're going to talk about this with upper management, you know, just because you can feel that, like, no one's going to be able to do their jobs after that anyway. Especially if they were laying, what he said, they were laying on the floor in their own blood. Like, is someone going to clean that up? I don't know. I
Yeah,
Sad,
personally couldn't do it.
sadly, this stuff happens, and it's one step away from slavery. It really is,
Yeah, good point.
and it's just awful.
They just need the whip. Get back to work.
the
Yeah,
thing
Like,
is
and
whoa.
though, the thing is though, don't feel like you're powerless to stop it, because you're not. You have more power than you know. Sure, the way it's been presented is that you're just a simpleton employee, but that's not the case, because if you and a couple other buddies within the company itself just stop working, especially with the labor shortages nowadays, you carry a lot more weight than you would think.
Yeah.
And if there's a problem and you can't solve it with your manager, or the problems with the manager and you can't solve it with the upper management or even the owner of the business, if it's a smaller business, then just quit and start trying to talk to as many people around your town and say, hey, this is a terrible company, don't work here. and eventually they're either going to change their ways or they're going to get run out of business. And that's the only way it can be dealt with that. Because if somebody's not treating you like a human, they don't deserve to be in business. Because
Yeah.
every human has individual dignity and respect that is just natural born and should be respected. And if that's not the case, then whoever's causing that issue shouldn't be able to have their dreams fulfilled, especially if they're shutting down and belittling everybody else around them, as that's not behavior that is appropriate, and it's just not decent human being. It's no different than being a barbarian in the medieval ages.
Yeah.
So
So before I
you
read this
got the power to
update,
do it.
what do you guys think happened before I read it?
Well, what was this one again?
The one we just talked about.
What do you think happened the next day? I think they went back. I think they got called back and with an apology.
Yeah,
So
probably that cheesy corporate apology, like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We actually do care about you." You know,
Maybe.
the YouTuber apology.
so here's the update. OP says, so I went into work today. So this was what, 19 days ago or 15 days ago. So pretty recent.
Okay, so relatively recently.
Um, we went into work today. First thing I saw was the sign that reads 1,184 days of safe working and no days lost to injury posted on the front office. Then I walked back to find everyone working like normal. I asked my department what was going on and they said, we're going back to work. I said, the only reason I came in today was hoping you guys would be ready to discuss how to make this place safer and possibly talking about how we can join a union to better our circumstances. One member of my department responded with, that's how you get fired. So I told them I wasn't going to be supporting a company that's almost literally trying to get away with murder. But if they want to stand in opposition of doing what's morally correct, they can, but I won't. They shrugged me off, so I took my stuff, loaded the car up, walked over to the 1,184 days of accident free days, and wiped the board to 0. Now I'm at home applying for new jobs.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, my man. Excellent.
And RIP Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Again,
it's
excellent job. Perfect execution.
again, I hold this up to some of the one of the recent projects we're working on is revealing our we haven't named it yet, but it basically defines elite performance, all the characteristics that you can attribute to organizations that outperform. So performance is obviously, it's the name of the game. So they outperform their competitors in their industry. But the other qualifier and the most simple qualifier in the world when you really think about it is retention. A company that performs well and their people stick around and they want to be a part of that, that's the winning formula. So if you're out there looking for a job and or you're looking to join a company, that's one of the things. How they're performing is important, but more importantly, what's their turnover rate? Are people, is the place a revolving door? And if you find out it is, I can guarantee you that it's not going to be a place that you're going to want to work at. And if you do, it's going to be for tangible reasons. They're going to offer you, they might offer you more pay than the firm next door or down the street, but you're going to have to compensate for that in many ways. It's just not going to add up to a fair deal for you.
And here's where the difference between leadership and management comes into play. Like someone commented and said they had a coworker die on their job. The boss, gave anyone that wanted it that day and the next day off, and the company brought in a counselor. They said this felt like the bare minimum. So always remember how easy it is for work to replace you and how hard it will be for your family to replace you. Pick family over work as often as you can.
Yep. Literally that in a nutshell.
And someone responded to
I
that even said we had a guy attempt suicide in one of the work bathrooms and someone found him in time and he lived, and the company still offered counseling to everyone and his group. We're given the rest of the day off. So it's like, again, it's like that's leadership versus, because I understand like you can't just not work. You can't just, I mean, unless there's seriously something wrong, which the original story there's something wrong there. And this guy came back offering a solution, like what can we do to make this better and safer and healthier for all of us. He wasn't going in there like, everybody get out, let's just continue to strike and see how long the company can last without us. He was being proactive and not reactive. But
Hmm.
Yeah, and and then if you put yourself in his shoes at the end, you just have to walk away too and let it
right,
go.
yeah,
You can't harbor that things like that. There's some folks that just they can't let things like that go. Like I told them, and they get fixated and obsessed with a bad situation. Just move on and forget about it because there's a million of those situations out there. Just avoid them and move on.
yeah,
And again, it's not the easiest thing to do, but once you do it, it's so much better down the road. Like, don't sacrifice yourself now in hopes of pittance later. Like, take the action necessary to be able to elevate yourself above whatever situation you were in to begin with. Like, there's no replacing yourself physically and mentally and whatever rate you're making an hour. Because if there's one job paying it, there's going to be another one, and there's going to be a whole nother set of um, leaders and bosses and stuff that are probably going to be better. Like, it's
yeah,
not, while it's common to have sometimes iffy bosses, it's not the norm. So there's always a way out if you're in that situation.
Well said.
yeah. All right, let's see here. Let's move on to the next one. So this one's generic, just at least the title. It says they need advice because there's rude leadership going on. This was posted about a month ago in r/managers. So they work for a. How do you properly say? I know it's like a software thing, but SaaS, like SaaS. I don't. How do you?
Software as a solution, SaaS.
But is that how you say it then? Just SaaS if you're reading
Yeah,
it. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So this person works for a SaaS company in US and recently moved to California for this job. I find the team leader, manager's manager, to be very rude. For example, I don't have a car here because I just moved, so I rely on public transportation, which is really shitty. I'm able to reach the I imagine public transportation
Go.
in California. I'm able to reach the office at 8:33 a.m. for a weekly meeting that starts at 8:30 a.m. In reality, it doesn't start until the next 5 to 10 minutes because everyone's pouring in, joining online, or just taking time to settle. This has been the case since last 3 to 4 weeks. Before that, I'd reach super early, was paying for cabs every time. So now in our meeting last week, he tells me that I have an inclination towards being late, which I accept as my fault, but then he keeps mentioning this every time. Like we were talking about a project and he's like, quote, "Oh, you wouldn't know cuz you were late to the meeting." Which is not true cuz I've never missed the beginning of a meeting by being 3 minutes late. It doesn't even start until I reach. This is just one example. Another example is when I canceled a meeting because I didn't have anything to get reviewed, which my manager suggested. This is one time in the last 4 months, and he taunted me about this as well. I believe that there's a better way of communicating things, but I'd love to hear from you all. Am I or am in the Okay, I think they're trying to say, am I overanalyzing things?
Well, my initial reaction is, first of all, they have what's called a box schedule. When everybody has to be on time at a certain location every day, and then you start your day at 8, you start your day at 9, you punch out at 5, whatever it is.
I
That's
hate that.
working in. Yeah, it's working in the box.
Yeah.
And so just crawl it next time you buy a new refrigerator or something very big, large cardboard box. Just climb inside it. That's what it is. It's stifling. It's yeah. And then you have it. We're sweating the 3 minutes, right? So this is a situation where these folks they need to talk and they need to define what's more important. They hired this person in today's world. It's not easy for young people, especially if they don't have a lot of resources to get to work. And if you are using public transportation, um, you're restricted, and it
Yeah.
doesn't always line up with a box schedule. So it's a simple. I mean, if I was this guy's manager, it's an easy fix, or this girl's manager, easy fix. You
Yeah.
tell the team, you say, hey. Sandra she lives in so and so. She's got to take the 7:35, which doesn't get off till 8:33. We've had our meetings at 8:30, so we're going to move them to 9, whatever, or we're going to be very nice to Sandra when she comes in because it's got to suck for her showing up a few minutes after we've started. There's ways around this stuff where people can just go, okay, we're good, and move past it. But yet, this is how you create a quiet quitter.
Yeah.
It, it- we're seeing it happen right now. It's ridiculous.
Not
Like
to
they
mention
said,
just general animosity between an employer is just unnecessary stress and like just not, there's no point of it. All you're going to do is lose an employee and or create some sort of hatred, which could end up in some extreme cases like to doxing or trying to leak or blackmail stuff or whatever. So it's just a can of worms that doesn't need to be opened, especially when there's a very civil, easy way to go about it. Like again, move the meeting back or allow OP to join online for the first like 10 minutes, and once they arrive, they can just hop in and begin to join.
yeah,
Like it's
personally,
very basic problem
personally, I
solving.
kind of like I'm a very late person. Like I've always been that way. I can get up however early to get ready for something and I'd still be late. um so I get it, but at the same time, I don't really view, I don't know if this is good or bad, but it's just my personal view. I don't ever really have viewed the work that I've done worth, you know, getting super on time for, like at least like a corporate job, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I'll get there when I get there. I value my life and my lifestyle over promptness. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just my personality. I've gotten in trouble in the past many times over it. But there's like no amount of trouble I'll get in that just changes that about me? And some people are the opposite. They have to get there. Like my sister, she has to be an hour early or else she has anxiety. I'm more chill, laid back, like if they hate me type thing? Um but a lot of these comments like disagree, or I guess they weren't really, they're just asking for advice, but a lot of these comments are basically saying it sounds like you're trying to justify being late. And, like while they acknowledge that you have to follow the public transportation schedule, you can't change that, then you're tied to it. So don't be surprised if you get in trouble because that's just where you're putting yourself in. Like you said, Keith, the box schedule.
Yeah.
So,
This is as a if you're a supervisor, if you're a manager, leader, and we'll have other sessions where we talk about those and what the differences are. But you got to pick your battles too. We
yeah.
are imperfect people. We are not perfect. You know, m- Most of us have some wonderful strengths and some major some major defects or flaws,
Hmm.
right? And I think, you get into these this box type thinking where we're looking for zero defects and total compliance and conformity and adherence to everything. It's impossible. It gets to the point where it's too much. And I think this is a case where if this is a good employee, I mean, you invested time and recruiting and hiring and onboarding and getting them plugged in, and they obviously have the skill set. And I'm not, we didn't hear about anything else, so let's work through this. This is nothing. If a loss of 3 minutes and arguably the meetings don't kick off promptly on time either, there's something else at play here. Let's maybe we need to get to that truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if this is based out of California and you were already working for the company before you moved to California, that implies to me that the company has a relatively large amount of funding and profit. Why don't they have a few company cars or a company, even just like a small taxi service that they can pick up employees from the local area each day, which will not only help like with like just like an easier way to transport, employees saving money on petrol each week, and ensuring that employees arrive on time, like whether there's car troubles or there's just a ton of traffic or whatever. I feel like that would be a worthwhile investment, especially if there's more than one employee potentially missing each meeting or each morning due to car related issues or transportation related issues. That's my 2 cents because it sounds like it's a relatively successful.
Well, and I mean, you're also citing a an awesome case study that was written about. There's an author named Matthew Kelly, and he fantastic book. I'd highly recommend this to every leader. It's called The Dream Manager, and what Kelly tells this story about this company, how they tackled that problem exactly how you just described. They had a real turnover problem, and when they really dug down into it, there was no, the company and the workflow just did not align with the workforce that was available that needed transportation to get to the work sites. And once they solved that problem, productivity went off the chart. Retention was awesome. People stuck around, and the company grew. I mean, it's a wonderful story. So I'd highly recommend that for anybody, especially when you're digging down. You know, if you really want to ask yourself, what mental state and emotional state do we want would we want our employees showing up to work with every day, right? If you can answer that question, man, I want them highly motivated. I want them engaged. I want them looking forward to work. I want them eager to hear and learn information about what we got going on, and what everybody else has going on. If you ask yourself that question, and if the answer isn't satisfactory, you got to attack it. You got to find out, listen, if my folks aren't wanting to show up to this meeting, or they're not wanting to show up to work today, it's on me as the leader. It's not on them, you know? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, just encourage, these are great thoughts to have, especially what's going on in today's world and workforce.
Yeah. I think like both are at fault, like I don't think the management or whatever you want, like the team lead, I don't think they need to be rude about it for sure. It's I feel like they're kind of being petty, like, well, you wouldn't know because you weren't there, So I think that's just their way of being jabby, and they don't have to be. But at the same time, they are late, so it's like there's no excuse to be late. But especially if it's a meeting, it's one thing if it's you work 9 to 5, and like some days you come in, 9:03, some days you are on time. Like that's just fluctuating. But because things happen, like there's traffic, there's whatever. But yeah, if it's a meeting though, I feel like you have to go the extra mile, so to speak, to get there on time.
Man, on an unrelated side note, though, regarding transportation, another really cool motivator would be if companies gave a weekly, especially for people in my case, because I live in a relatively rural area, it takes a half an hour to drive, for example, for me to school every day. And like I burn, even though I have a relatively fuel efficient vehicle, it's still like $50 to $70 a week to fill up. So like like when I was working or whatever, if I can have a if I can have an employer that would give me like a even $25 or $30 stipend each week to compensate for like gas costs, that'd be amazing. Like
Yeah.
that would no idea how happy that would be. Even if it wasn't for the full tank of gas, it was just a little bit extra on top to help with that would be amazing.
And I
It's
think
like
when you
that's just
give out, like
obnoxious.
when companies do that for their employees and they do these little favors, it kind of forces the employee to try harder, because then there's no excuse. Like this person can kind of say, okay, yeah, I'm late, I acknowledge that, but the fact that they're making fun of me for it, I don't feel bad for being late, versus I show up late and they give me gas money. It's like, well, now you can't really speak on that. You know what I mean? Like they're trying and you're not really trying here. So, I feel like, yeah, like you said, companies could offer, it's almost like an opportunity to be more responsible.
Yeah, that and it's just a really just yeah, I'd be more motivated to work harder.
Yeah,
I would be like it's so much better of an environment. It just seems so much friendlier and nicer. Like
right.
straight off the bat.
Yeah, just it covers their butt. Like the company can be like, well, you can't really come after us because we're doing you a favor.
Yeah, that is just a nice act in general. Like, I mean, I
Little
love
things like that go a long way. That has long shelf life. You know,
it really does.
it really does. And I guess to sum up this conversation though, with the age old axiom that came from Vince Lombardi. So there's a thing called Lombardi time. And if you haven't heard of Vince Lombardi, he spoke a lot about leadership and leadership ethos. what it means to lead, what it means to compete. And he was known, and he's one of the most famous football coaches of all time, with his incredible streak with the Green Bay Packers. You have all these teams that rise over the years where they have, like, it's a legacy team where they, like the Patriots, right? Well, Vince Lombardi, he did that with the Packers. And very, very smart man, and his players loved him, adored him, and he was a taskmaster. He was hard, he was diligent. And one of the things that he always said, though, Vince Lombardi time is, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. So Lombardi time is, if you set that as a life habit, that when you're negotiating, with a job, or you're thinking about where you got to be, you got an appointment or whatever, always plan to be 15 minutes early, and it will save you a lot of heartache and earn you some decent cred over the years too.
And even like setting back your the clock in your car, or on your kitchen stove, just to, um how does that go? Like, if you display it like it's you're later than what you really are, you're gonna like rush a little more.
Oh
But
yeah,
just being in the position in general to rush is where you run into problems. Like, you only notice the
yes,
traffic when you're running late. There's
yes,
always traffic. It's a problem today because you decided to sleep in a little bit. That's like
exactly.
that's my biggest struggle. I'm definitely that person. I acknowledge it. I get it. I don't know, I guess I'm not to the point yet where I care enough, like, to, you know? But I've gotten into jobs where I get my own schedule. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I can't do the whole corporate thing anymore. I've recognized I can't. I mean, and other reasons too, but that's a big one for me.
Yeah, flex time is important. Once it becomes part of your lifestyle, extremely difficult to give up, to
Yeah.
let go of. I find myself, I work at odd hours. If given a 40-hour work week, you're not going to see me do that Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. There's days where I might start my morning at 5 a.m. simply because I'm up, not because I set the alarm, but I wake up when I wake up. So a lot of times I wake up early. And then other times, it could be a weekend, could be quiet time in the evening. It's flex time. Working under flex time condition it can be a lot better mentally than working a grind in a box, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and sometimes you just get inspired to work like at random times. Like, I mean, there's been times when I've been trying to like fall asleep at night, and then I'm like, you know what? I need to go probably work on that website that I just haven't felt motivated to do yet today. So, and then all of a sudden it's like 12 o'clock at night. I'm sitting here with like a monster or whatever, pounding back and starting to get like just really making some high quality products that look amazing. And
That
like,
happens to us too, for sure. We've talked about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. That's when you're one of the things that we've kicked around, and we're gonna probably write a piece about this, but we'll talk about it now, is how to achieve or reach the flow state. And what you just described, Evan, is really close to it. It's when you're just excited, right? And the
yeah,
energy comes from within. It starts flowing. You're not trying to force the effort, and you just get in the zone. You get in this kind of, undistracted, free flowing zone that's called flow, and your best work comes from there. It really does. So creating a flow state is super important for just for a lot of things. Learning to know your flow state, and when you can trigger it. So we'll save that for a future conversation for sure. Where there's so many topics that come up when we start talking about these things.
If you think that I have a little bit of success in my life, I can tell you what I attribute it to. Yes, self-confidence, yes, mindset, visualization, goals, all the things I talk about all the time. Listening skills, influence, energy transfer, how to be happier, all of that stuff applies. When you get to winning, for me, it's come down to maxing out. And what maxing out means is you do one more at least than you think you're capable of. So when you're done, whatever you're doing, whether it's at the gym or phone calls or meetings or in sports, one more shot, one more throw, one more swing of the golf club or the baseball bat, the separator is for the winners, they do one more. I'm addicted to one more. And so I want your mantra going forward to be one more. What does that look like if we're working out? That means when we're in the gym and we say, I'm gonna do 5 sets of 10, I'm crazy. Like I'm a psycho because I wanna win. I wanna be somebody. I wanna separate. I wanna compete. And the way I do that isn't with my giftedness, because I wasn't born with a bunch of gifts. And I think gifts are crap. I think for the most part, gifted people struggle in life because things come easy to them. I like that things haven't come easy for me in my life. I like that I don't have natural talents in every area. And maybe you like that about you too. Maybe you've looked at yourself all your life and thought, man, I don't have that natural beauty or that natural talent or this gift for creativity or intellect or humor. I don't have any of those things. But what I got is I will outwork you. And so at the gym, one of the things I focus on, they say it's 5 sets of 10. When I'm at 10, I go one more, bam, 11. If I'm running on the treadmill and it's a 45-minute run, I never finish at 45. I always go one more minute, 46. If I'm at the office and I'm supposed to make 25 phone calls that day, when I'm at the end of the day, I always do one more. If I've got meetings, I always do one more. My mantra for 3 decades in business has been one more.